Speaking with your host, Larry Novak. Heard every Saturday morning at 11:05. Join in by calling 508-822-1106. It's time for Larry Novak and Politically Speaking.
This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, one of the most talked about Republican shows on the South Shore. Today I thought we'd talk about, is the United States House of Representatives in play? According to the Cook Report, if the election were held today, there would be 216 Republicans and 219 Democrats, a swing of 3 seats, which would mean it would be extremely difficult for the Democrats to pass any legislation. I think that the House will be determined by who wins the presidency. If Donald Trump, who just had a record amount of money raised in one day, he raised $24.5 million. Nobody has done that. The last, when Biden announced, he raised $6 million, Sanders $5, Elizabeth Warren $4. Nobody was even close to President Trump. His supporters are more dedicated to the president, and the record-breaking numbers, $24 million in one day. It looks like the campaign will cost billions. Not a billion, but maybe billions will be spent. That is incredible. If the House comes down to 216 R's and 219 D's, anything's up for grabs. The only seat that really looks very competitive in the Northeast is the Maine 2nd and New Hampshire 1st. And that depends on who runs the Maine 2nd. New Hampshire 1st, Mr. Pappas, Congressman Pappas, really doesn't fit the makeup of that district. He is too progressive on social issues, and the voters in New Hampshire tend to be more conservative. That district, if the president wins, as we saw in the last election cycle, both of those districts were exceptionally close. They would be exceptionally close again. If the president's people have predicted they will win in a landslide electoral college-wise, that's yet to be seen. They predict they're going to win all those marginal states and pick up Nevada, New Hampshire, and another one that Hillary Clinton carried, which they must have some internal polling to predict that. If that is the case, the Democratic Party will probably collapse because they'll be out on the mainstream. People don't, in the country, Massachusetts will probably be Democratic, it always is, but will the margin be substantially cut? And if the president is looking like he's going to have a sweep, which I didn't think was possible, because other polls have shown it to be exceptionally close. If it's a landslide sweep like the Trump people are predicting, then it will be very bad for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. If they lose the House, they have no voice in the government in Washington, and that's yet to be seen. The Senate looks like it's the Democrats might be able to win a seat or two, but those races are too close to call. Or the president could pick up a seat or two. The president presently holds 50, I think it's 53 to 47. If they pick up 2 seats, the Republicans, it would be 55 to 45, which is a 10-seat swing, and that's huge. Getting locally, the Republican Party is not really on the move yet. It's got to rebuild. I don't know if there'd be any changes. The money in this state goes to the liberals. Jay McMahon, a candidate for Attorney General last time, has announced he's running again on the Republican side. He's out trying to set up an organization, raise money, moving ahead. We wish him well. Miss Healy looks like she might be running for governor down the road. Charlie Baker is now thinking of running for a 3rd term, and that is an interesting dichotomy, really. nobody has run for a third term in years in Massachusetts, and nobody served 3 consecutive terms. Michael Dukakis served 3 terms, but they were broken up. And would be a new, he served 12 years, but not consecutively. This would be new. Any governor that did that would be making history with his popularity. So we will see. There were interesting races on the horizon. Massachusetts has an all-Democratic delegation, which is never good, especially if the Republicans recapture control of the House. There would be nobody, we wouldn't really have a seat at the table. Both senators, liberal Democrats, and will never have any major influence in the Senate if the Republicans control it. Elizabeth Warren's views are outside the mainstream of America, and you would not see her being very competitive in the weeks to come. But if we look at the Cook report, which is one of the leading it really does most of the predictions, and you just wouldn't believe their predictions. They predict the House could be in play, depending how the presidential race develops. I think that's good because if the House is in play and the Republicans are able to win that's pretty good. Presently, there were in the Senate, there were 12 Democrats up, 1 independent, and 22 Republicans. The 12 Democratic seats that are the 3 that are unlikely in play are Peters, Smith, and the open seat in New Mexico. Also, some people believe New Hampshire is in play. Governor Shaneen, they think, is beatable. I think that with the right candidate, Massachusetts could be very competitive, because you can't name one thing that Markey has ever accomplished. He's been in federal office for over 25 years. I can't name one piece of legislation he's ever passed. He's the invisible senator. He was the invisible congressman. I think that somebody, if they could take the fight to him, really, it could be competitive. On the Republican seat, the one that's Cook says is a toss-up is Jones of Alabama. If anybody but Moore receives the nomination, it is unlikely Jones could win, already giving the Republicans 54. There are 2 Republican seats. Both Republicans are ahead right now. They're in play. McSally of Arizona, but she's up 2 points, and Gardner of Colorado, but he's up. And the other ones are Georgia, Purdue. He's way ahead. Iowa, Ernst is ahead. Kansas, which has never elected a Democrat to the Senate, is ahead. McConnell in Kentucky is ahead. Hyde Smith in Mississippi is ahead. Tillis is presently running a little bit behind in the polls, but North Carolina always breaks in the end for the Republican, and there's an open seat in Tennessee. Solidly Republican Alaska, Arkansas, Idaho, Montana, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, West Virginia, and the open Wyoming seat. No Democrat is very competitive in Wyoming. They just don't do well. So, I mean, those are the races that are coming that are going to determine the future of the country. If you look at Trump's camp, going back to the presidential, which I think those races hinge on, the president, if the election, according to his campaign manager on CBS News today, would win Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, Florida, South Carolina, New Hampshire, New Mexico, and Nevada. 3 states that were won by Clinton were New Hampshire, New Mexico, and Nevada, not won by big margins. Furthermore, Minnesota, which Trump lost by 1 percentage point that, according to the Trump people, is in play. He lost it right in the margin of error, 1 percentage point. They think Minnesota could go either way. There are several swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The president has always been behind in the polls, even when he won those states. He's still behind, but they are predicting his campaign that they will win all three. That is interesting if they pick up Nevada, New Mexico, and New Hampshire. Furthermore, much to the chagrin of some of the progressive, some people and other polling is now showing Maine is in play, which I could see. So it would be interesting to see. As long as Ray Moore isn't nominated in Alabama, in that Alabama Senate race, the Democrat would very likely, like Scott Brown was here in Massachusetts, have only a 2-year 2 years service, and that's what happened with Scott Brown. He did win, Jones won, and then he lost 2 years later, which is likely to happen in Alabama. It will be interesting to see if Moore is able to win the nomination in Alabama. There was a congressman running, Republican congressman, the Republican Secretary of State. But a lot of these races at the national level hinge on how the top of the ticket does. If Trump sweeps those states, then there was very little likelihood of the Democrats retaining them. The second problem for the Democrats is the senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, is thinking of running for governor again and leaving the United States Senate, which puts that state in play. No Democrat will win that Senate seat once Joe Manchin loses. Joe Manchin, they thought, was way ahead and was a very close election in the end. So the state is trending heavily Republican. They don't seem to have a lot in common with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, progressive wing, has left the Democratic Party behind in West Virginia. The party is no longer the party of mainstream America. Will the elections impact other elections? I think it will. I think the president may be more competitive in Massachusetts this time than last time. If they start piling up huge leads in these other states, especially with the amount of money that's flowing into the president's coffers, will they pump money into some of these other states that are long shots at best? I would predict one of the states that could come into play is Hawaii. People tell me I'm crazy. 1972, Nixon carried Hawaii. They tend to vote for the incumbent. They tend to vote for people that are in office, even Democrat or Republican. So that could have an impact on that election. It is an uphill battle for the Democrats. There are, so many of them running. The ability to raise money will quickly evaporate for the Democratic Party, and you're going to see more and more of that. So we'll see what happens in the weeks to come. We're not going to be able to know what happens till the Democrats are able to show that they can continue to fund these elections. If the president's able to raise, which they're now projecting he will raise over $150 million this quarter, that's just huge. You can do a lot of advertising with $150 million. And it should be noted, most of his are small-time, first-time contributors, people that have never been involved in the political process in America before. How will that play in New Hampshire first? I think that the New Hampshire first and second will come into play. I think that if you look at those races that the Republicans nominate somebody that will go out and hustle, they could make a race of those things. In the Northeast, it's always more difficult for a Republican than in the rest of the country. So if there's going to be great movement towards the president, you'll see it in those local elections. The mood. What is the mood like? We have the best economy we've had in 50 years. Now it looks like it's going to be a record economy. If that continues to the election, the president will be assured of re-election. People don't vote out incumbents. The state that will come into more play in the House of Representatives will be California. Will they be able to win back some of those seats they lost in California and New York? Well, that's the question. Will they be able to make gains back in those areas? They replaced Ed Cox, former President Nixon's son-in-law, as party chairman in New York and elected somebody new to lead the charge. Those are major developments. They put a Trump person in as chairman of the New York State Party. Will Trump be able to regain control of this New York State Senate? I don't know, but they're going to put a lot of money into it. They've controlled it for 150 years. They have to pick up 8 seats, but who knows? It could happen. If they have the money to articulate a message of why they should be back in control and have the Democrats' passage of some very liberal proposals in New York, will that hurt them? You don't know. Those are key questions. In Massachusetts, there will probably be no competitive races. It's just typical of the state. We don't get out and we don't hustle Republicans like they should. And hopefully we'll see them, and we'll see more and more of them races coming in the near future if the new state Republican chairman's able to rebuild the party. So I think those are the things that you should be looking at in the national races. The House looks like it's going to be in play. If it is in play, the Democrats are going to have to take resources that would go into the presidential race and target some of those seats. It's all about money, and that's what people have to understand. Everything is about money. And, will Sean O'Connell run for the state Senate in the next election cycle? Who knows? That would give the Republicans a plus. She's looked at the race. That's what I've been told. She's looking at the race very seriously locally. That would be an interesting race between she and Mark Pacheco. It would surely put the spotlight on both of them. As money flowed in from both parties all over the state. And it would be a state rep versus a state senator. And that would be something to watch. There is elections for mayor in both Taunton and Brockton coming up, and those elections will focus on the future. I had sent a letter inviting, as chairman of the Republican Party in Brockton, to 3 people. And they actually, you're on the air with Larry Novak. You're on the air with Larry Novak. I guess we got him disconnected. This is Larry Novak at 5. You can reach me at 508-822-1106. We were talking about the races in the coming up election cycle, and the most interesting one would be if there was a hotly contested local races drag a lot of voters, and that's very interesting. We will continue talking about who will some of these races go to. Will the Cape seat be very competitive in the state Senate this election cycle? It could be. The Cape is where Trump polls very well in comparative than the rest of the state, the Cape and Plymouth County. So those races are where they'll be targeting, and hopefully they'll elect new people. And those elections will bring in new blood. somebody that runs, and then if they lose, they stay active for years. August 6th, don't forget, people, the nomination papers become available for ward, town committee, and state committee. They determine the rules on which a political party operates under. They determine the rules in which the nominations can be gained. Those offices are very important. Both political parties need to go out and hustle and get new blood. I'm amazed. I live in a very democratic city, the city of Brockton. They don't fill their slate. They haven't been able to do it in years. But the city is trending now very unenrolled. The first ward that went unenrolled in the city of Brockton was Ward 6. It is probably going to be followed by 1 very shortly and 3. Once that happens, you will see more competitive races locally. A lot of the candidates who run now are unenrolled. I ran into a prominent Democrat the other day, and they said they didn't even know half the people running. And that's true. I don't know half the people running, and I've been very active in the city of Brockton. I've never heard of them. This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, and I can be reached at 508-822-1106. We are discussing politics and the impact on your life. Why is politics important? Well, it determines issues like border security. It determines what is a crime and what isn't a crime. It determines how taxpayers' money is spent. If the public isn't tuned into those issues, then we have failed as a nation. America has failed. Democracy only functions when there is a healthy two-party system. If you fail to engage people, then democracy starts failing. Corruption breeds. When one party overwhelmingly dominates a state, it breeds corruption. Look what happened to Massachusetts in the 80s, late 80s, when Michael Dukakis overdrafted bank accounts, when the state was heading towards receivership, and when the Bank of Boston at the time told the state they were going to shut their accounts down if they didn't make deposits. Those are alarming trends that we should be very concerned about. We are seeing the change. National politics does impact the ability to bring money back to a district. It also brings money back to build your roads and your infrastructure and the airports. It is one of the things that we have to be concerned about. If the Republicans take the House and Senate again, we have nobody at that table that sits there. We have no Republican congressmen or state senators. I can't name one thing that Ed Markey has ever accomplished. And I'd like to know from anybody if they can name anything. 508-822-1106. This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking. We will take a short break.
Before we do, I just wanted to mention, you were talking about Kansas, and they have elected Democrats before. The last time they did so was 1930 with George McGill.
George McGill.
Yep, 1930 to 1939 is when he served in Kansas.
He served as in the Senate.
In the U.S. Senate. Yeah.
Which is not a stellar performance for the Democratic Party in Kansas.
90 years almost now that they haven't elected another Democrat.
And they rarely elect anybody in Kansas to any office. And we are seeing that more and more in some Republican states. What the Democratic Progressive Wing has been able to do is motivate the Republicans to vote straight Republican tickets in Republican states.
And Wyoming was another one, too, you were talking about as well. 1961 was the last time that they elected a Democrat.
Gail?
In Wyoming, John J. Hickley.
1961.
Yep, and Gail W. McGee was January 3rd, 1959 to January 3rd, 1977. That's when he left office.
And they have not won elections since. And that is true. Arizona will be in a fight to the finish this election cycle. And we have to continue to see what's going on. This is Larry Novak. We're going to take a short break, and politically speaking, we'll return back with more commentary. Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, and we've been talking about politics on a nationwide basis today. We've highlighted that the House, it seems, is now in play, and will the Democrats be able to retain control of it? I said earlier, I think it all depends on how well Donald Trump does. If he doesn't do well, they won't win. If he does well, anything's up for grabs. Those are the important issues that need to be addressed in the weeks and months ahead. We are now entering campaign season for the 2020 election cycle. Who will emerge on the Democratic side? The president wants to run against Elizabeth Warren because they consider her to be extreme in her positions. And she would be then able to take the fight to the president. Would she be able to win? That's the key. Winning. And they do not, I think Biden would be the toughest candidate for the president. The president, some of the polling has the president down, but when you raise $24.5 million in one day, outraising the Democrats 4-1, you got to wonder. It seems that, the public, though it was mostly small donations too, that the public is siding with the president, which is interesting. Little donations mean support. When somebody gives you $20, they're going to vote for you. They gave you $20. Somebody gives you $1 million, you never know. But the $20, they might be buying access. $25 donations, you're buying support. They're going to come out and make sure that they vote for you. They've got an investment in you. They now think the president will raise over $150 million this quarter. 3 times what any Democrat raises. That raises another very interesting issue. Weld is yet to file, Bill Weld, any donations to his campaign. He has a staff of 8. Will he be able to raise adequate funds to compete against the president? Is he any threat to the president? I don't think so now. And as the money continues to pour in, if the president raises, say, 150 this quarter, how does Bill Weld compete against that money machine? It is almost impossible. But anything can happen. I mean, lightning could strike, but it is unlikely. If the president wins re-election and the Democrats lose the control of the House, what will happen? Will they continue to push for investigations? And will they continue to demand changes? Who knows? You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. You can't predict what's going to happen. This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking. We've got to talk about local because we all reside in the Taunton, Brockton area. Are there going to be competitive races? Yet to be unseen. Local races bring more people out, and that's why I keep hammering it. you want to make sure that on both political parties, the ward and town committees are filled, and that the state committee seats are hotly contested with the best known people that will bring out a vote. And they will bring out a different vision. I think in my district, there will be a challenge to the state committee man. I think that, it comes down to performance and not promises. It comes down to who's the best known candidate. It comes down to should the candidate who is best known come out of the city of Brockton. Those are the key issues. Hopefully, we'll be able to move this forward. We need to articulate a discussion on it, and we need to see who has a vision of what is important, who has a blueprint to rebuild a second party in that district. Should candidates be contested? Should Senator Brady be challenged? Should Princess Cronin be challenged? Should the radical from Ward 6 be challenged? Mr. Du Bois. Those are the key questions. We have attempted to articulate that difference. We need to bring candidates who are willing to commit that difference. If a candidate says he's going to run, he's got to be out there. He's got to show up at other events. He's got to make sure that that he's showing up at other events. The more you work at these things, the better your chances are. The more organized a political party is, the better their chances are. If it's just neither party does anything, then the majority party wins. And that is not helpful. And you want competitiveness, because it breeds new ideas. You want compromise. You want something down the middle. Not one side should always win everything. If they do, it's not good government. It is better government when you bargain for things, both at the federal level and at the state level. It shouldn't be about personalities. It should be what is in the best interest of America. Who has the best vision for the future? Who has the best policies for the future? Whose policies do you agree with? There shouldn't be no hatred and animosity that has developed in the baby boom, generation, as the greatest generation now is departing the earth that fought and lived through the Depression or fought World War II. They understood, the greatest generation, that things had to be done by compromise. They understood that they wanted to elect people that had their core values of family, faith, personal responsibility. That generation was why it was the greatest generation. They lived through very tough times. They went through and fought for a vision of America, and they stood by it. They had faith. They had personal responsibility. They had loyalty. And they believed that America should come first. They believed that America was a great place to live. They didn't believe in the over-criminalization of everything. They didn't believe in this disgusting talk of locking fellow politicians up, the chance of put them in jail. It's disgusting. Those people are out to time away from their family, articulating where they think the country should go. It is not healthy for these radical people on both sides of political parties to attempt to destroy them. This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, one of the most talked about Republican shows on the South Shore. We do have a Republican bias. And I can be reached at 508-822-1106. And there was supposedly Alan Green is out finishing his signature drive to get on the ballot, and he will be facing there were three candidates in the Ward 3 school committee race. There was Mark, the incumbent, DiAugustino, there's Blessing Rogers, and Alan Green. It will be an interesting race. It will come down to who can hustle the most votes. It will come down to who will knock on the most doors. It will come down to who can raise the most money. So it's an interesting race. When I came back, I retook over the Brockton City Committee. It had, under my leadership, 16 people on it. Hopefully, in the next recycling, we'll have, not recycling, re-election period, we'll fill the committee back up to its strength and make it, at least so there's hope for a candidate in the future. It is my goal to fill as many seats up on it as possible. I don't want any ward left unorganized, and I don't want any vacant seats. I want to get people engaged in the political process. I want people to believe in the fight for the future. I want people to believe that they can make a difference with issues and that those issues are important. I believe that the issues that are important in this election will be determined on three major issues: border security, immigration, and reform. Massachusetts has had the largest influx of immigrants in the last 2 years of any state in America. Will that change? The president has ordered massive raids into the state to arrest them. That's the law. I saw one of the candidates for mayor said that he pushed for an ordinance which would have been for really sanctuary cities. And he now says, well, it would stop the president talking about that. Well, I can't go to their countries without legal paperwork. Why should they be able to come to this country without legal paperwork? When is it that this country should always just lie down without any rules of law and not allow other people in? I believe that if we can't go to their country without any paperwork, they shouldn't be able to come here without paperwork. It's a fairness of the system. If the systems are not fair to us, why are we supporting them? Why do we allow this to continue time in and time out? It is not healthy. It is not good government. Then I look at and analyze the things, and there were 3 Democrats running for mayor of Brockton: Jimmy Pereira, Mr. Davenport, City Councilor Davenport, and the incumbent Mayor Carpenter. I recently received a letter I sent out to invite them to speak before the Republican City Committee, and Mayor Carpenter took a great thing, because I told him we're going to send a letter out to the Republicans and maybe endorse and maybe not. He thought I threatened him because I invited him to a Republican event to address it beforehand. Well, you know what? That's what democracy is about, Mr. Carpenter. It's about going and articulating your views in front of an audience. I am sorry that you had open heart surgery. I was sorry to learn about the passage of your father. I do not believe that when you do not appear before a forum of citizens in your own city, if you don't wish to appear, that you should be reelected. Regardless of who invites you, you should go to all of the meetings in the city. You represent the entire city. I take great umbrage with your remarks to that letter addressed to us. Furthermore, it was on city stationery about a campaign event paid by postage from a city meter. Not good. That paper should be privately paid for. The city should have nothing to do with the campaign. It shouldn't have any city resources used in it. I took that personally, and I continue to do that. But your remarks with people that were leaning your way to supporting you would really cause doubt as why would they? Now, I mean, maybe I'll suggest to everyone we leave the office blank. because these choices are not people that I really want in it. There are, when you attack people in writing, it shows your mentality. It shows your open hostility. I disagreed with your comments, and I don't know if you wrote the letter or your chief of staff did. But believe me, I will post that letter shortly on the internet. Again, I think that those type of remarks are unhealthy. There were 5,000 Republican votes in the city of Brockton. They will swing that mayor's election if they want to. But, the devil you know is probably better than the devil you don't know. What do they accomplish? I mean, is the city a better place since Mr. Carpenter's been mayor to serve? I don't know. The public has to answer that. Would it be better under a 26-year-old city councilor who's been an American since 16? I don't know. I guess he would have to be 14. He became a citizen. I don't know. Is it better under Jimmy Pereira, who says he's a progressive Democrat? I don't know. Those are decisions up to the committee and up to the people. But, the thing that bothered me when receiving the letter from the mayor was the fact that it was ran for a postage meter. The fact that it was on city stationery. The fact that it violates the Campaign Finance Act. You cannot use city resources to pay for campaigns. Shame, shame, shame. Those things are very alarming, and if a Republican did it, they'd get indicted. So I wonder if there's a one standard for certain people and a different standard for other people. This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, one of the most talked about shows on the South Shore. Joey.
So we were talking about North Dakota and South Dakota during the break, and you're talking about if there were any Democrats
there have been.
In both. Well, yes.
Heidi just
yes.
was defeated.
Yes.
She served one term in the United States Senate.
She's from the North Dakota Democratic Nonpartisan League Party.
Right.
That's a offshoot of the Democratic Party. The last candidate from the Democratic Party, standalone, was John Moses in 1945.
And that's North Dakota.
And he served 2 months.
In North Dakota.
In
South Dakota, there have been McGovern. There have been a lot of Democrats.
Yes, a lot of Democrats. The last one was Tim Johnson, it says here.
Tim Johnson?
Tim Johnson in 97 he was elected, and he left in 2015.
So he did, 8 years?
97 to 2015. So that's 18 years.
18 years, which is a long time.
Yeah.
When you look at the political makeup of Massachusetts, you have to wonder, what does the future hold? Massachusetts hasn't been competitive really since the 70s. And is that good government? We had Tip O'Neill at the time, and he was able to get the big dig dug for us. We don't have Tip O'Neill anymore. We don't have Ted Kennedy anymore. The present senators do not have the clout or the ability to get things done. We had Ed Brooke in the 70s. He was able to bring in money into the state because he was a minority, and he was well known and well received by everybody in Washington and well liked. Excuse me. But those are people of the past. We had Margaret Heckler in the 10th Congressional District. Never had an appropriation request turned down. She fought till she got them. She was a fighter. She passed away this year. A lot of Americans passed away this year. Those were people that really stood for things. They stood for the belief in a better tomorrow. They had personal, they believed in personal responsibility. They believed in faith. They believed in loyalty to their state. You don't elect people like that anymore. You don't find them. I can't, and I'm still not one person called. Does anyone can tell me what Ed Markey's accomplished? Joey, do you know anything?
No.
Do you know one piece of legislation he's sponsored, Joey?
No.
Do you know anything that he's ever done for anybody?
No.
I mean, nor do I. I mean, it would be interesting to see the Democrats who support Ed Markey. What has he accomplished? Where's the bacon that he's brought home? What major legislation has he sponsored? He sponsored with the Congresswoman Cortez in New York that green legislation that went nowhere. Everybody laughed.
Did he get? It got 0 votes, right? I think it did. It got 0 votes when it went up for a vote.
Right. Nobody would co-sponsor it because it was a costly affair that would bankrupt America. I mean, you know, we all have difficult times in our lives. There are peaks and valleys, and those peaks and valleys mean something usually. When you can ride a rough spot financially in your life. The government just prints more money, and but that one would have collapsed the government of the United States. Not very good. The green, yes, do I think climate control, climate warming is a problem? I do. You can see the change in our climate. We've had a cold spring. It's almost July 1st. I don't think we've had one day of 80 weather yet. What's today, 75? It is much warmer than that. So, you know, it isn't as hot as it's been in previous years. Is there a cooling? I guess there is. And that cooling has an impact. You know, then you have to go back, and going back to, I hit this one further time, the Ward and Town Committee paperwork comes out August 6th. Both political parties should be out hustling to fill those seats. That's the rebirth of how we nominate people for statewide office. It's the ability to field a slate of candidates. And you know what? Every town committee should be organized in the state, and every ward committee. There is no excuse for it. I will do my best, as I always have, to fill up the Brockton Republican Party. I have always had it up, almost filled. I'm going to go and get a voting list this week and start working on it. Those are important issues as we go forward. I believe that that is the rawest form of political activity. I believe that the soldiers of a political party are the unsung heroes of America. They go out, they walk the streets, they believe in democracy, they attempt to organize. Both political parties, my hat is off to them when they do an excellent job. Those are the things of the future. This younger generation is not engaged enough in that. It is an older generation that's still involved, and it is tiring, and it's a lot of work. But you know what? You continue to do it because you believe in a cause, and I believe that the Republican cause is right and just, and the Democrats believe their cause is right and just. If we want to change the political discourse that's going on in America, they should get out and organize and join those ward and town committees. And they can change who gets the nomination. They write the rules for a political party and how ballot access is gained. Yes, there's state laws, rules, and I think personally that we should go back to partisan local elections. Furthermore, I believe that when they changed the legislation, that somebody in statewide office was miffed at their political party because they their candidate didn't get the nomination. Well, I believe that you should fill those seats. I believe that we need to get 80 candidates on the Republican State Committee, a man and woman, and on the Democratic State Committee. I believe that wards all should be activated and people should go out. Is it fun work? No. Is it hard work? Yes. But you're making the system work. From that, you can get people elected that will change the criminalization laws. You know, a rule, all criminal law is a rule of society. Those rules can be changed at any given time. All you have to do is pass the legislation. When I was a child, it was unheard of to legalize marijuana. Today, marijuana is legalized. So, I mean, that change would have come better if they had controlled a political party. So people that get engaged, if they don't like a candidate, they can join those ward and town committees and deny them the nomination when they run for re-election. Those are the most important political offices they ever had. This has been Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, and now we're going to have the year in review with Joey Driscoll.
Okay, today is Saturday, June 22nd, 2019, and we have two on this date events to talk about. The first one is the commencing of Operation Barbarossa.
Barbarossa, the invasion of Russia.
The invasion of Russia that was conducted. The attempted invasion of Russia that was conducted by Germany, and it was started on this date in 1941, and in 1937, Joe Louis knocks out James J. Braddock for his first heavyweight boxing title in a significant moment in African American sporting history.